order. If everyone could rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'll keep my comments brief. Thank you all for coming out. It was a wonderful summer, but the way things feel out there, I think it's already September, so welcome back. Just wanted to mention one thing. We did have a really nice Morse graduation. Great to see all those folks, great to see the graduates. It's some super speeches by a number of students, and it was a beautiful day, well planned out by the staff. I think the students really appreciated the fact that there were frozen bottles of water at every seat. I think that was the only day of summer we've seen this year. And it was nice to have the experience on the new turf field. So great graduation. So with that said, we'll move on to item 4.0, approve and amend minutes of May 19th and May 27th. We'll begin with the minutes from the 19th.
I move we approve.
Motion to approve by Steve.
Second.
Second by Dave. Any changes, amendments? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve, please raise your hand. Okay, that motion passes. Okay, on to the minutes from the 27th. These were the minutes from our budget hearing. Is there a motion?
Move they be accepted.
Move to approve by Alan.
Second.
Second by Bill. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve, raise your hand. And that passes. Adjustments to the agenda, item 5.0. I have one. We need to add an executive session at the end. I guess we could make it 12.5. This is to deal with a personnel matter. Patrick, you had mentioned we need to remove 11.6 because we have no first readings. Is there anything else? That's it? That's it. Okay. All right. Item 6.0, public session. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak? Okay. We will move on to staff reports. Item 7.1, the Maine Autism Leaders Team Report, and I'll turn that over to Patrick.
Sharon Brown is here to talk to you and give you an update on our team that has been, I think it's the second year in progress, on the autism training that we've received from the Department of Education. So I'll let Sharon go forward.
I'm actually going to introduce you to Sarah Hellman, who is one of our school psychologists. Sarah last year had expressed interest in being on the team, but the team was already formed and in motion at that time. This year, this past fall, we had several folks who could not rejoin the team for multiple reasons, and it was a perfect opportunity for me to have Sarah join that team and take a leadership role, because I knew if somebody could pull that together and take it forward and give the team great focus, that she could. And she's certainly done that. So I'm going to let Sarah share with you the outcomes of our team for this year, what we anticipate for next year. I'm very proud of them This has been work that has been shepherded or coached by the state, but this team actually had to set their goals. They had to determine what made sense for us and how we would begin this process and make sure that information was shared with staff and that interventions were identified. Right now, as of our December 1st count in special education, we have 33 students in this district identified with autism, and there may be others that under a category such as multiple disabilities, and they're pretty evenly split. We have 16 K-5, and we have 17 6-12. And none of those students are in outside programs. They're all in our schools. They're all being serviced and provided for by our own staff. And this team is going to be able to really, I think, bring some cohesive practices and much more understanding from for general ed folks, because autism is a field that's very particular and sometimes it's hard to understand how those things go. So I'm going to let Sarah describe the team for you and where we stand right now.
So I'm passing out a handout just to review sort of what we've done this year and who we are. There's currently 9 people on the team, myself and mostly special education teachers. There is 1 general education teacher. Ross Berkowitz is on the team as well. Because of some staff restructuring, we're going to change it a little bit next year and add some more classroom teachers because we were represented by all schools except for Phippsburg for part of the year this year, and we want to make sure that all of our schools are represented. So the top of the sheet just has who's on the team. So it's myself, Lisa Gassenguay, Mara Cruz, Aaron Shabak, Nancy Riggs, Julie Baker, Jackie Anderson, Sam Burdick, and Ross. So we went to Orono a few times to get some trainings and sort of becoming autism leaders and making sure that we have good knowledge of evidence-based practices for students with autism. And then we focused our work in RSU1, and one of the things that we did in the month of April was to promote Autism Awareness Month. It's a National Autism Awareness Month, and we did various things in different schools. So Sam Burdick at BMS worked with her kids during crew to make jigsaw pieces about interesting autism facts. And she gave them a video of a student with autism that was on YouTube talking about what it's like to have autism, and the kids really found it to be very meaningful. We also put things in the staff newsletter as well as some of the school newsletters about interesting autism facts, and we had some bulletin boards about autism in some of our schools. So we did various things during that month of April. We did some trainings with all of the education technicians in the whole district about evidence-based practices for autism. There are 40 evidence-based practices that research has shown is effective for working with individuals on the autism spectrum, or what we call ASD, such as like having a visual schedule, changing some of the reinforcement, doing some discrete trial training. There's lots of different ones. So we gave that training to all of the education technicians in March, and I think that they thought that that was valuable, as well as all of the special ed teachers got that as well. A lot of our work has been focused on training all of the staff in every school, except we haven't made it to Morse yet, but we made it everywhere else this spring, in just autism awareness. So one of our goals as a team was to create better knowledge of autism and the challenges that students face with autism, and interventions that teachers can use in classrooms, and sort of an understanding of where somebody with autism may be coming from. And about halfway down the sheet, we did a survey, a pre and post survey for all of our trainings. They were like hour-long trainings that we gave to all of the staff in every school. And we can see that according to their self-assessed knowledge, the pre and post survey that they took, that their autism understanding really increased. So for example, 68% of people marked that they had adequate knowledge of what challenges kids with ASD face. before our presentation, and then an hour later, 95% of the teachers did. So we really hit our goal as a team in really helping to promote autism awareness to staff. And we actually borrowed the presentation from the Topsom folks because they have a malt team over there. We've been kind of sharing materials with them, so it's been a nice community building experience, if you will. So that was a great thing. And some of those presentations, what came out of it is that we really wanted to next time include the cafeteria workers and the custodians and the bus drivers and really everybody who comes across a student with autism in our schools. So we're certainly going to expand that presentation to make sure that the secretary, the ones that are manning the phones and so they didn't get to attend the presentations will be there next time. We're also going to make sure that we present to Morse in the fall as well. Next year we're going to focus on executive skills because it's an evidence-based practice for students with autism. So we're going to make sure that we have every student who's identified with autism will have a self-management goal. And some of the kids have behavior plans now where they have behavior goals, but this self-management goal will really be helping them to learn how to manage themselves in some way more. So at first they'll have a lot of external supports, but then eventually they're going to be monitoring themselves. So maybe it's even on-task behavior. Instead of having like a teacher monitoring and mark their on-task behavior, they'll be marking that for themselves. So we're really excited about that, and we're going to make sure that we can start to create that in our schools because we also did some work in executive skills through some other channels in special education this year, and the staff really is just giving us a lot of feedback that they want a lot of support in that area. So we're going to kind of dovetail it with the MALT team there. And we're also going to focus on social thinking curriculum and talk about and think about how we can promote social skills training and sort of adequate knowledge of that for kids on the autism spectrum because a lot of them really struggle in the social skills area. So that's what we're going to focus on next year. Does anybody have questions about the MALT team or our work, what we've done? Yeah.
Hi Sarah, I'm Jenny, and I used to work at Wilbur Central School, and I think definitely the person I learned most about autism was from Marlene Willett, and she was so inspiring about how much she could teach everybody about what are the best approaches, what does it feel like, and how does someone present, and how do you best interact with them. And one of the things I know she did, she worked a lot with the families. And I wonder if this is one of those things where we're starting to identify it with children, but their parents didn't have the wonderful knowledge we have now to help them understand it as a student. So when we start educating our kids, we also find their own parents have a lot to learn from knowing, oh, is that why I feel a certain way, or is that how I see the world, or that kind of thing. Does any part of this extend to supports for families at all?
Yeah, we've talked about creating a parent training and support group in our community, and it would be really, it's kind of the mid-coast area. The Topsom people are really interested in doing that. Okay. The MALT team last year really felt like they wanted to focus on our schools and make sure that all of the teachers felt comfortable with and felt like they were supported when they were working with kids with ASD. So we kind of made that a priority, but that's certainly been in the back of our mind, and it's something that we really wanted to get to this year, but we just didn't get to it. So parent training and support is very much a priority for us. And there are going to be expanded websites in Maine that will be like a kind of a go-to resource for parents where they'll get to, they'll find out information about how to find, good diagnoses and treatment and social workers and whatnot with experience with kids with autism. So there is a lot sort of happening right now, and I think in the next couple of years we'll see more of that community-based support. Okay. Yeah.
Are our numbers of kids identified on the spectrum increasing year to year? I mean, I don't know.
So on a national basis, the number of kids with autism does increase every 5 years, every time that they look at it. And nobody really knows why. Some people might say that it's because we actually are having more people with autism in our communities, but most of the experts say that it's really because we have better diagnosis. Especially in Maine. 20 years ago, it was really difficult to get a diagnosis of autism in Maine, and a lot of people had to go to Massachusetts for it, and now it's pediatricians are feeling more comfortable, and they're given tools and they're given assessment tools to, if they don't diagnose it, then they know exactly who to refer to. So I think that it didn't increase in our school district in the last year. It started out as 33, and then this year it's also 33, because we had some people graduate and then other kids were identified. But I think on a national basis, yes, it is absolutely becoming more common.
Fair to say part of it might be attributed to the fact that we broadened the spectrum.
We have broadened the spectrum, and you know, the DSM-5, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Psychological Disorders, came out, the new version came out last year, and it used to be Asperger's and various disorders that were separate from each other but all on the spectrum, and now it's just ASD. And so the diagnostic criteria has streamlined a little bit, and it's actually somewhat easier to understand. And that even alone might make it, we see a lot of kids in the school that are not significant, they don't have severe autism, but they do have autism-like characteristics, and it's tricky for practitioners and for people who are diagnosing to kind of figure out where those lines are. Yeah, because we're seeing more high-functioning students for sure. Yeah.
Any other questions? I just want to ask, it seems like a lot of the work that you're doing initially is awareness and education and working with the staff. What do you see the function of this group being long-term once that sort of education piece and awareness piece is covered?
We really want to be a support especially to our teachers. So that's part of the reason why we're focusing on creating a self-management goal for kids with ASD, because the teachers say we love this education and we want to know more about how we can help kids with ASD in our classroom. So we would really like to, and we feel like we have all the tools now to be able to coach them in some of those instances. So we want to be able to, be their consultant, if you will, and say, this is how you can help with the student. And I think that that's really what they're asking for. So I think long-term, this team will make sure that we have good evidence-based practices for all students with autism, such as if we have a student with autism who doesn't have a visual schedule, even if they're in high school, having a visual schedule of just what their classes are can be very helpful. So making sure that every student has that I think will be helpful to the whole educational community. So, and then also to help the parents feel more supported is also, because a lot of times they might feel isolated, so creating that trainings and support groups is another priority.
Generally, how well do you think that we're supporting our autistic population in the schools now that you've been part of this group and been to all the schools other than Morse?
I think that there are some kids who are very well supported, and then there are other kids who need a little bit more support, and sometimes it's hard to figure out how we can put that together. In our district, we don't have lots of developed special education programs that are like, we're going to put them over there. So we have to kind of, if we have a kid, we have to figure out, okay, we have to develop a program for you essentially sometimes. And that is good because we want individualized programs and we want the least restrictive environment, but sometimes we have to be very creative in the middle of the school year to try to figure out what we can do. And some of these challenges that these students face are hard challenges to address. They're not, it's very difficult to teach the nuance of social interactions because there's no formula that we can teach them, and sometimes their brain thinks in formulas, and so it requires real ongoing interventions and you know, we have to be really creative and dynamic in how we're thinking about it. So I think there are some cases, I mean, I'm a school psychologist, so I work with individuals. That's my job. I go from case to case, and there are some kids that are very well supported, and then there are other kids that may not be, but then when we identify what the problem is, then we go in and try to support them the best we can, but there are things that come up as they go through school. So for example, in high school and in middle school, a lot of kids with ASD really struggle with organization, and you know, they may complete their homework, but they don't get it in. So trying to help them create more, just teaching them organizational skills is something that's ongoing for them. So they may be in a very well supported in 5th grade, but then by the time they get a little bit older, they need more support in that area. So it's kind of a dynamic, changing thing.
And then just one last question. What other resources would you need to improve on how we serve our kids?
Yeah. Sharon may want to answer this question. I think that there are lots of evidence-based practices that we can expand on in our schools when we're talking about how to educate these kids, and it's about time and resources. So I'm going to have Sharon answer that question because I think she's better to answer it.
We're going to be talking about the life skills program. Mm-hmm. Are some of these students being served by that life skills program? Are they participating in that program?
There are some kids with autism in the life skills program, yes.
Okay.
They're the ones who need a little bit more, they need more life skills and more functional skills. They have functional adaptive behavior deficits. So they have difficulty with self-care and those types of things. There are lots of kids who wouldn't fit the life skills kind of program, but are still in our schools.
Okay.
But there are a few with autism in the life skills program, yeah.
As far as what do we need, Tim? First of all, I need a shake. It's going to sound like a broken record. We need resources, we need time. And when I say resources, it's not just money, but it's, for instance, when we have a team like this that can function together and wants to and be a resource to teachers and staff, somehow we have to create time within their day for them to accomplish that work. And that's tricky. So we usually start Wednesdays and we try to have folks come together, and sometimes I will get a sub to come in so that teachers can work together for half the day or something. But, and frankly, I'm really glad that the state started this because it gave us a chance to pull a team together. And if they hadn't, internally, we didn't really have a mechanism for that to happen. So it was very good for us that they started it, and I think they've done good work. Do we have things to do and things we can do better? Yes, we do. Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thanks for coming in. Thank you. Okay, item 7.2, we have a number of reports on new programs for fiscal year 13-14. You received hard copies of those reports in your packet. I'll turn it over to Patrick. I'm not sure how you want to proceed with this.
Yeah, I think we're just going to have go in a certain order here and just have the principals and directors come up one by one and just kind of give you a quick summary of what's in your backup and see if you have any questions about each one. So we'll start with life skills.
I'm going to share a book with you that I have to give one of our entities a huge amount of credit. This represents work with life skills students this year of this grade stands at 4 all the way up to 12 because as of this past year, grades were in place. And a little after mid-year, they began collaborating on community projects. And so I'm just going to give this to you. It doesn't have names, but you're going to see lots of different kinds of kids. I would challenge you, if I have the time sometimes, to look at these pictures and pick out which are staff and which are students. But you're going to see some really happy kids doing some pretty novel things that they haven't had a chance to do before. And building a peer group that begins from, you know, the early beginning grades and goes right up through, which gives so much benefit to these kids. So I'm just going to pass that about, and if I don't get that from you at the end, if you just give it back to Pat. I did prepare a page for you folks, and I'm not going to just read that. But as you look at that book there, what you're going to see is students interacting with a whole variety of adults, some of whom you would not recognize, but I did when I looked at that, and I thought, that's quite amazing. It's not just my staff doing this. We have students interacting obviously with teachers and with ed techs, and God bless them, they do important work, and we couldn't do it without them. There are pictures of parents in there that are part of some of these activities, siblings, substitute teachers or substitute ed techs, and consultants that work for us, and they get invested in these kids, and they volunteer their time, or they sometimes come in and sub when we have a staff member out. So I think that our students are very well supported as we develop this, and lots of stakeholders have a place here, and it's fascinating work. And you're going to see by the expressions in that book that these students respond to having a context to work within, and they have so much to give back. In that book, you'll see that these students have been involved in lots of activities in the community and locations. One is Hawks Farm, and Karen Hawks happens to be working with them in there, and she came and told me a story early on in the year, and you know, Karen also drives a bus for us, and she said, I just have to tell you that, you know, they had a field trip to the farm, it went great, and I want you to know that those students were some of the best behaved I've had on the bus. I don't always hear that about my students, and it was wonderful, and I thanked her for saying that because she could see the importance of that kind of work with them, and she could be part of that, and one of their bus drivers, filling lots of different roles. They went to Botanical Gardens up in Boothbay. The Maine Maritime Museum is in there, Patent Free Library, and Special Olympics. The variety of activities and participation in events that they were able to do was quite remarkable. And I didn't have to beg anyone to do this. These are staff folks, sort of with some real direction set by one of our ed techs that really took this on and made it happen and brought a very important component to this work. You'll also see them in there participating in cooking. A lot of that, we actually take the groups to Bath Middle School because Bud is very generous and has a place here that's fully equipped, and our students can come together and make that happen. And Karen Curley, the social worker here, also works with them, which gives them lots of exposure to lots of different folks that are involved with them. You'll see them shopping, you'll see them cooking, you'll see them bowling. So they're beginning to use their community to know what is in the community and what they can access. And I would say the flip side of that for me that's just as important is that you will see this community get familiar with these young people. They're shopping at a local store that knows everybody in the community. And they go to bowling alleys, and they go to animal shelters, and then they go to educational places. You'll see them doing science experiments. So there's such a wide range and such a depth and richness that we can make available to them. Truly, I cannot thank this board and the community enough for last year approving an additional teaching position and an ed tech position so that we could begin that 4-6 grade span of life skills, which then could lead into high school. This year, as you know, we have another section to be added. It will now be grades 3, 5, 4, 6, and then, 3, 5, 6, 8, and 9, 12. That means we have seamless programming for these students all the way up through. K2, we try to keep them in their classes as much as we can because they have so much to absorb and so much to see and experience. After that, their instructional levels begin to show great divergence, and so we start giving them specific instructional opportunities that really benefit them. But we keep them as close to that school community as we can. So given that we can put 2 sections of this in Woolwich, we're going to do some extra work with Woolwich staff this year. These students sometimes, they very often will have low cognitive abilities and be identified as with an intellectual disability, which used to be mental retardation. But they're not all identified that way. And so as Sarah said, there may be students with autism, there may be students with multiple disabilities, but they have a low cognitive profile and or the low functional skills profile. And so those in tandem can make learning a very great challenge for them. But along with that, you get many presentations just like you do in a regular population. You get students who are very low-key and kind of withdrawn and not active participants. You get those who are more typical and pretty open to everything and life is a happy thing. And you get those who, because they have not learned other skills, if they can't tell you what's breaking down for them or what's frustrating for them or what's going wrong, they will act it out for you. And that looks like behavior. And it's behavior as a result of their inability to identify how they can ask for what they need and let adults know what's going on, and then have some strategies to take care of that. So we actively teach them those things. But it's difficult sometimes to see a life skills group with all those different variations of presentations, and for those that are more significant behaviorally, you begin to wonder, and I've heard Tom wonder this year, God bless him, do I have a life skills group here or do I have a behavioral classroom? And I said, no, you have a life skills group, Tom, but some of these students will have behavioral presentations. There's no way to parse that out completely one or the other because they're little people. They're combinations of characteristics and traits. But with this kind of programming, now they will be in one school, at least from grade 3 through 8. They won't have to experience transitions between schools. Then they will go to one more program at the high school level. During that time, those groups are going to come together just as they did for the latter part of this year. They're going to be involved in community opportunities together. They may have learning opportunities together because of the way things are structured. And they're going to have a peer group where they know that they're not the only little person on earth, or as they hit high school, one of the bigger ones, who have difficulty in some of these areas. And they're going to know that there are ways to handle those things. The beauty of bringing younger and older together, one for me, is that you will see some of the older students that you never would have suspected do it begin to mentor the younger ones. And it's a huge amount of satisfaction for them. It's great for the little ones because they're learning from similar students who have had more experience and developed different skills. So I really, just as you do in a K-8 school or through any grade span, they need to experience each other at different grade levels and in different capacities. So that's where we are, and that's what you've enabled us to do. I am hugely pleased with the work. We have lots to do, but we have great staff involved. And I do believe that Woolwich will benefit from having these programs and the strength of the staff that will man them. And eventually our goal is very much to be available to Woolwich and to help with other things, maybe not exactly life skills, but be a resource to that community and give back from what the staff have to offer, regular and special ed alike. So there's my life skills bullet. Jen? Okay.
Go ahead.
So Sharon, I apologize if I'm a little slow to understand this whole program, but so the 2 additional staff people, are they going to be at Woolwich?
Yes, we'll have 2 programs at Woolwich.
So does that mean with that additional staff that all of the services that these students needs are now being able to be addressed through this program, which I would imagine would really help alleviate a lot of the burden on all other teachers in all other capacities? So with that additional staff, does that mean that we can really meet all of their needs within that program?
Well, we're going to meet all of their needs. We're going to do it through a combination or sort of a blended approach between whatever they can access in the regular ed setting in tandem with what they need out of that specific program. So most of these students will go to things like specials, or they will, they all participate in recess and lunch, those kinds of things. But when it comes to their own instruction and the kind of instruction, most of them will stay in the life skills classroom for that. But some will actually go into some regular ed classes.
So if they're attending regular ed classes, and I kind of think of special just as a class, because I think those are
That's right.
teachers just like everybody else.
That's right.
Do the additional life skills people, can they travel with those students into those
Yes.
classes, so those additional students don't, because to differentiate is the toughest thing, and I would imagine to differentiate to those
Right.
extreme needs would be more difficult
Yes,
for those
you're right.
teachers already. So those teachers, if those students are involved in those specials, they would have additional support.
That's right.
In that, okay, that's
Yeah, they do.
wonderful. And the other thing is if you have behavior problems and you don't have cognitive disabilities, does that mean that you wouldn't be part of this life skills program?
Typically not, Jen. That's not to say you might not draw on some of their expertise as a resource.
Right.
But typically, the profile of these students, and this is part of what we'll do with the Woolwich staff this year, to sort of give them that better grounding and understanding of what we're building. Typically, you're going to look at students with a low cognitive profile and students with low functional abilities. In tandem, occasionally you're going to get crossovers with one or the other, because some students are very low cognitively and they're tricky little buggers because they present very well socially. And vice versa. You have those that present pretty well socially and you have a pretty typical expectation, and when it comes to the academics, they really can't handle it. So there are so many combinations, it's hard to say precisely this is the only profile we'll take, but we know what we're targeting. It's those two areas, and that will kind of indicate if they blend in or out more with the program. Last year we served 6 students in the new program. This year we're going to serve 7 in each program, and we will be also reaching out to a child that's been referred, that is in Woolwich, but we'll be providing extra support for that child. That leaves us 4 on a waiting list. So we're already beginning with trying to juggle the needs and prioritize and make sure we're getting the highest needs children without leaving others behind.
And just one last question is, on the behavioral issue, because we've got this new group of population in Woolwich, would those behavioral issues need more support from the staff that's already there if there are critical behavior issues in that program? I mean, is there extra resources required from that school?
Part of what we're doing in bringing in the new staff, each program will have a teacher and 2 ed techs minimally. So if there are interventions to be made around behaviors, it will come from that core staff.
Okay.
And these 2 programs, you'll see them blend, because the teachers that we have that are going to fill those capacities and the ed techs are going to be able to blend easily across classrooms to make sure we're using everybody's availability and expertise to the fullest. Julia Baker was our teacher this past year, new to our system. She did a phenomenal job. I stuck her there and I said, Julia, I need you to build this program. And she had great strengths to bring to that. She's going to have a partner now to do that with. It's exponentially, that's much more than just 2 people. And they actually, this summer, have started already. They put in a day or 2 last week after school ended. They're going to hold summer session for these students in Woolwich. Our other elementary students don't go there, and the middle school students don't go there for summer session. But they will have it, and it will be a great transition piece, because the teachers that are going to work with them will be able to bring in these children that haven't yet perhaps seen Woolwich and have a much less demanding summer session to get familiar with it and be ready to go forward in the fall. Good for parents, too.
Summer sessions just for the new kids?
No.
No.
Summer sessions it's called ESY services and special ed, extended school year services.
Okay.
That's determined, there's a standard by which you would refer a student for those services. But in the case of life skills students, typically their disabilities are so significant that you don't want that lapse of time without any instruction occurring.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I had a couple. And again, I'm going to say this just probably for the sake of the board and the rest of you who are going to speak. the purpose of us revisiting these programs, what we've done in the past is, in past budgets, we funded new programs, and we haven't really gone back to look and see, how effective were they, what worked, what didn't work.
Right.
So that's what we're trying to get from these presentations. To follow up on a couple of Jen's questions, okay, so you indicated that this year you served 6 students. The program served 6 students.
We did.
Why was Woolwich chosen as the host site?
Well, sort of by happenstance. The spring before they opened, Tom gleefully gave me a tour of the almost finished building and said, "Oh yes, and we have a life skills room here." I said, "Tom, you've been working on this for 2 years. You didn't tell me you have a life skills room." But he was so proud of it, I said, "I'll fill that life skills room." And we'll leak out space for another section too. And that really logistically is how we did that.
Have there been any issues with transportation, transporting these kids from other communities to the Woolwich site?
No, that's probably, you're always going to have an issue here or there, but that's typical of transportation, not just these students. No, that's gone quite smoothly, actually.
Okay, and then talk to me a little bit about, this is year 1 of the program. If students are participating in this program, what are the outcomes that you want to see at the end of the year for those kids?
Well, and again, Tim, these are all very individualized, so I'll give you a boilerplate which will look very different for every student. But typically you're going to determine, and our teachers do, where they're operating first academically or cognitively and what kind of instruction they need. And we're going to focus in those basic areas of math, reading, and writing initially. But we're going to give them experiences, some of which you've just seen in that booklet, that give them opportunities to experience science or to get a look at what history or social studies might mean, which are very difficult, especially those abstract concepts, very difficult for them to have those senses. But the direct instruction will really focus in those areas, will match programs to their needs that fit them. Very often they will be, they might use some ABA methods, they might use some phonics instruction in reading, and every level has to be adjusted, so you have small groupings even within that group of 6 or 7 students. That's the first level, and then the next thing we want to see is an increase in their functional abilities, and that covers the gamut. I listed some of those areas in the letter that I sent to you. These children, you can't assume that they know how to approach an adult or a peer and initiate a conversation or to ask for something if they need it or wonder about it. You can't assume that you can send them out to the bus and they're going to be safe because they know you don't walk out into the road. So their skill sets have to be looked at really very specifically, and you have to break them down into discrete skills, as in if you're going to initiate conversation, you have to make eye contact. You don't bump into somebody else's personal space and do that by thumping their arm or worse. And there are things that you can say that somebody might be able to enter a conversation with you, and you give them very specific examples of that and help them practice that. And then they practice that across settings, not just school. School's one piece of their lives. They need to know how to do that at home, in the community, at school, any place they're going to be. So all of that is designed to get them toward greater independence as they move through K-8 and then through 9-12. They're going to go into the adult world, but it'll be a different one than we know. But all of that is designed to get them as conversant as possible with having a life that's meaningful, being able to give back to their community, and being able to interact with people that they live with all the time. So broadly, it's those academic skills that will be functional and those life skills that will be functional. And at the end of every year, I want to see every student, in whatever way we're measuring and targeting that, I want to see that growth pattern established. And over several years, we should see those pieces go up and up and up.
But we do have means of measuring that growth in ways that you can present that growth to the board so that we can see that the program is...
Yes, if that's, and frankly I was a little vague I didn't really probably respond to Patrick's request exactly right to provide this letter, because I thought it was for this year's new
Right.
position, sorry.
That's all right.
But in knowing that, yes, absolutely, I can tailor the details and the information so that you can see that this student had this amount of growth and this is what we've seen, and with specifics and specific measures.
And then my last question is, we've talked about, or I've heard you talk about the successes of this program. We know the need for the program. What were some of the challenges that you faced this year?
Well, the challenge of a first-year program is common to any first-year program, the growth. You're learning as you go very often. You put best practices into place that you anticipate. You may or may not hit all the exact needs of your first class of students, but you pull that together and make that work as well as you can. And I think the behavioral aspects of the particular group that started this in Woolwich, I think those were significant this year. We didn't anticipate that cluster probably as well as we should have. So we've had to pay a lot of attention to those behavioral presentations, making sure that other students don't lag behind, because they take a lot of time and effort. And I asked a lot of the people that I sent into that program. I don't have the availability to be in there supporting them all the time, and I don't really have the capacity in the department to do it. So I really called on their skill and their willingness to go in and do the hard work, which is literally building it from the ground up. So those were challenges, and we'll do better, but it's a growing process.
Okay. Any other questions for Sharon? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jay Pinkerton with the School Resource Officer.
Good evening. I'm happy to be here tonight to take this opportunity to thank the board and the community for the restoration of our School Resource Officer program. I did an evaluation and included Officer Rydell's report, and I think if you've had an opportunity to look at that, you can see, if you're looking for how effective it was extremely effective. And I ended it with, I have 45 faculty who will tell you exactly how they think things are going if you ask the question. They're not bashful about that at all. And at our last faculty meeting, I facilitated a process where we had an opportunity, everybody had an opportunity to weigh in on what they thought went well and what they thought needs to be improved on. And Officer Rydell and the SRO program made the top of that list. I had my secretary there taking notes and keeping score. From the moment he arrives on campus in the morning, greeting students out front and out back as buses are arriving, throughout the day, being a presence in the hallways, being available to parents, students, guidance, social workers, administrators, everyone, and just being out and about has made a huge difference. I'm told. It's my first year, so I don't have anything to compare it to other than what I'm told. I don't have firsthand knowledge of what it was like last year or the year before, but I do know that I've heard from many people that they think things are much, much better this year as a result of the SRO program and Officer Rydell. When you need to call DHHS and you have a police officer make that call for you on behalf of a student, it seems to me you get quicker and greater results. If a student needs to be transported to the hospital because they're in some sort of crisis, you get immediate results when there's a uniformed officer with that student, as opposed to trying to get a parent there to transport the student. When the parent can meet you there with Officer Rydell, they don't sit there for 4 hours waiting for somebody to help them. It happens very quickly. And I could make a very long list of all of the positives of this. I can't imagine the school without a school resource officer. I believe his report showed 85 incidents. 35 of those resulted in suspendable offenses if he was involved in that. We've had 35 suspendable offenses this year, one which resulted in an expulsion. That's actually a pretty low number for a school the size of Morse High School. Compared to the other two schools that I worked at, it's actually very low. And I guess I'm proud of that. But you never know, and it's hard to measure what it is you prevent. But I think having a uniformed officer and a presence on campus, you prevent an awful lot of things. But it's hard to measure it. I just know that that number is low. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions for Jay?
I just have a question. I think it's in Ted's report. He indicates he's working with the guidance office and the social workers on occasion. And I just wondered if there's an issue of confidentiality that arises.
There's not. Ted is a member of my administrative team. We meet every Monday morning. There hasn't been any issue with confidentiality. When a student, when a guidance counselor reaches out to Officer Rydell, it's no different than reaching out to a social worker. In fact, they're probably all together trying to figure out the best plan for whatever the issue is or situation is. He's just part of the team at school that helps map out the right route.
Any other questions? I just have two. My first, I noticed that Officer Rydell's Ted's report went to another officer with the Bath PD. What has been the Bath PD's response to providing us with a resource officer? Have you talked to them at all to get their input on how this has worked out for them, and has it been beneficial for them?
I talked with Mike Fields, the chief, and he's extremely happy. I sent him a copy of my report, and he's extremely happy with and grateful, as I am, with the board and with Patrick. He named Patrick as well, for being able to get this back in place in the high school. I think, I can't speak on behalf of him, but I think on the law enforcement side of things, they see great benefit to nipping some things in the bud and having some information and establishing a familiarity and relationships with many families and students in the Bath area. I think that's the benefit on that side.
And I've talked to Mike a couple times, and very open, asked us if we would provide kind of some feedback on the position, on the person that's in the position, how it could be improved, what would we like to see more of, or are we content with all the services that we're receiving. And Mike, again, has found it from a community perspective to help have an officer focus on our youth, is beneficial for all of us. And I would say that the school resource officer reviews our crisis plans across the system, would be very helpful today when we're securing our front entrances. And just, if we have principals in our system that have a question or would like him just to come over and visit the school, or, for example, if we have somebody that is reported that drove by our school or parked at one of our parking lots for a longer period of time than normal, again, Ted would go over to that school. He would make sure that everything's fine. It was a great connection with the police department, and I can't say enough about Mike and his department. They've always been very helpful to us.
So then, I have to ask this question. One of my beliefs is it's all about the people. It's not so much the program. The program's only going to succeed and fail as much as the person. Patrick recognized there was a need at Morse for a resource officer. Is Ted the guy? We know there was a need, but is he the right guy to fill that need?
Okay, now I'm going to read the paragraph. What I wrote is, the answer is yes. I said the SRO program is no different than any other program in this school. If you have someone that can provide strong leadership and has a clear vision of what excellence is, then you have a great program. Ted has provided the leadership and has made the commitment to make this an excellent program. And I mentioned people. There's almost 700 people in our campus, and they all know him and know him pretty well and feel comfortable going to him if they need something. He's taught in all kinds of classrooms. It's not just law and order. It's the whole package. I've worked with, from part-time to full-time since 1988, I've had experience with the SRO program. He's a perfect fit.
Go ahead.
Jay, just looking at the report, it says tobacco problems, there were 14 of them, which is one of the highest numbers of problems that we're having. And that really worries me just because I work on tobacco prevention specifically with kids in my other life. Do you think that I know we've just rewritten our tobacco policy to expand it to talk about substances that contain nicotine, not necessarily just tobacco, because we're seeing those products now prevalent in our society through e-cigarettes. Do you think there's more that the system could be doing to help educate kids about tobacco use?
Maine has done a lot over the years with the tobacco settlement. I think Maine's probably done more than any other state as far as how they use that money. Could we do more? Always. If we had 14 incidents, most of those weren't used, they were in possession. When you happen, either a teacher notices that a student has tobacco products on them, or if you, for some reason, you have cause to conduct a search, you think a student has a knife in their pocket, and you end up finding tobacco products. A lot of those incidents were like that. I think there was only 3 of those were used.
But if they have possession, they're using it, right? I mean, more than likely.
Pardon?
If they have tobacco
Oh,
products,
yes.
that probably
No,
means
it's always somebody else's, you know that.
Yeah, yeah.
That's all I want. No,
I'm just saying,
I'm holding it for her. Yeah. We can always do more. The SRO is part of a team that tries to provide that education when you have that teachable moment, and then you involve the family, and you have the law, and then you have education, and you try to do both, and put students on notice you can't have these things in school, and if you do, then there's a consequence next time.
It'd be interesting if Ted had any feedback from our tobacco policy, or if he has seen that or looked at that a lot.
Yeah.
Just be able to.
I'll make a note of it. We haven't had a conversation about that, to be honest. Okay?
Just receptivity of parents has been pretty good to his activity.
Very good. Yeah, very good. Good to the point where I usually get in the office around 6:45. I came in the office on a Monday morning, and there were 2 parents and a student waiting for me and wanted the officer something that happened over the weekend. They were waiting probably more for Ted than they were for me, to be honest, with the issue that they had. So yeah, it's been great. Very good.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Jay.
Next, we have middle school health.
Good evening. We've also had the opportunity here at that middle school to use Officer Rydell for going through emergency drills with us, a couple of incidents that have happened that we needed him in a hurry, and he got here in a hurry. And we've also used him in our health class with Maria Newcomb on being a guest speaker on substance abuse and the use of substances. The purpose of health education at Bath Middle School and also at Woolwich is to provide students with the skills and the knowledge that they need in order to make positive, healthy choices for the rest of their life. And that's the whole thing that Bath Middle School is trying to put together with Maria Newcomb as she's talked to staff at Bath Middle School, staff at Woolwich, staff at the high school, as well as making connections with the community to better put together a health curriculum for us. On the handout that I handed you, grade 6, grade 7, and grade 8 at Bath Middle School receive instruction in health. For grade 6, it's 25 days. For our 7th graders, it's a quarter, and also for our 8th graders, it's a quarter. 6th grade curriculum, communication, safety and accident prevention, nutrition, puberty. 7th grade curriculum deals with disease prevention, mental health, human growth and development, as well as nutrition. 8th grade curriculum overview is community health, stress management, and managing and learning what common stresses are ahead of time, healthy relationships, and substance use and abuse. Maria, our health instructor, has used Access Health for resources. She's also invited in SASM to do presentations around sexual harassment and sexual assault, and invited in our Karen Curley, our social worker, to look at alcoholism in the families as well.
Yeah, what was we were a little spoiled a few years ago. We had Kathleen Reed, who was a retired doctor, that even do our health program for grades 3 through 8. That was several times a week. That was an outstanding program. One of the limitations of our program right now is that we would see this person, Linda Blakely, who does a great job, one day a week. She meets with the kids once a week, which is a challenge for her. In our 6th grade, we have Project Alert. Carl Fleck comes over from the Sheriff's Department and does that for, I think it's 14 sessions. And that helps to cover our 6th grade curriculum. And that's basically on substance abuse and prevention. In our other schools that you, other classes that you have in front of you, there's, our goal is to be a lifelong learner, to take a look at this, and our product is when they get to 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, and out of school, is that they've been following the appropriate manners and appropriate behaviors that would be benefit to them. Again, these programs are delivered for us by Linda Blakely, by videos, by discussions, by question and answer, lecture, the whole variety. But again, one day a week is hard to follow up. It's one day, every 7 days, you come back to me. But I'm saying I cannot validate exactly how much we've progressed. It's hard to validate that, but I do know that the kids are very aware. I was very pleased when I took our kids down to DC this time. It's one of the most dance groups I've taken down there, most polite. They were aware of life around them, and I was very pleased with that. But again, to validate 1 year curriculum is very hard to do that. But I do see the benefit. I'd love to be able to do it more than 1 day a week. That was something in next year's budget, not this year's budget. Questions?
Questions from the board? You know, again, I'm going to ask the same questions I'm going to ask both of you, and I know that you've got two different people, two different types of instruction, sort of two different curriculums. In general, and in the report that I got from Jason, his last paragraph, in theory, what he discusses is good, but I want to know, in reality, is this stuff happening? And I haven't read the paragraph. Basically, my question is this a successful program? Is this making change now? He talks about how down the road we'll see the benefits of this. This was a very controversial, to some degree, program that we introduced or reintroduced back into the RSU. And the board got behind it and we funded it. I just need to know, is it working? Is it worth pursuing? Are we just filling time? Or are we having success with this program? And I guess you kind of have to speak, each of you, to each location.
I mean, I can speak to it from a district perspective first, is that, again, 1 year is difficult. I think that the tough conversations that we had when we were contemplating, I don't think we were contemplating, but when we could afford to put this back into the budget, was the number of students and families that we may try to help with social, emotional, needs that they may have. And again, 1 year is difficult, but one thing that I would like to see the data on after next year or halfway through next year is possibly, how many referrals we see, to guidance, to our social workers, students that may be, how many students we can connect to counseling. Obviously, there's other things in this that, for example, safety issues. It's going to be hard to measure safety things that may be at home for a 6th grader. But when it comes to my real focus or priority is that social, emotional, needs that some of our students and families have, and how can we be proactive instead of being reactive. Right.
One of the things that we can look at in 2 years is the Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey. It just came out this year from 2011 to 2013. So we'll be able at middle school to measure success or not measure success based on the results in 2015 when that comes back to us. We at Bath Middle School did an integrated approach. We did not have the luxury of having this doctor account for Bath Middle School. So we're in our science classes, our guidance classes, our social work, PE classes. It was an integrated approach. It was working for us. But currently, the system is working extremely well. We have an awesome teacher. The kids are engaged. They're not just learning, but they're actively learning and sharing with the community. And some of the benefits that we're also seeing is at-risk kids coming back during guided practice time or after school time or early morning time to meet up with the instructor because they have built up that relationship. And she's also a track coach, so she's building those relationships outside of the classroom as well. So I see all kinds of success. I think it's a great move by you guys, and we're reaping the benefits of it.
Great, thank you. That's awesome.
And that same report was coming out for us as well, but I'm measuring a different group of kids. It's not measuring the same group as they go through. It's hard to say that group has been successful. But again, I think that any time we give information to kids, we make them aware, that there is a benefit to that too. I was just sitting in on a 5th grade puberty class, and that's an awakening in itself to think about that. But we have all of these things in place. For 5th grade puberty, and in 6th grade we have Project Alert, 7th and 8th grade we have the health program. And again, we do not have the standardized test of what's coming out by the state as a major growth or lack of growth. But you do see it in the behaviors of kids. Referrals to the office are very minimal. I have no substance abuse that I'm aware of anyways at Woolwich. And I have no kids who smoke. And I think it's because of the parents, the community, and what the school's been doing. But I can't measure it specifically.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you guys for coming this evening and presenting. I appreciate that.
The last new position that we were going to talk about tonight is Dave Richards, our new maintenance position. Well, you guys are a tough act to follow. Sharon brought a picture for it. Jay goes on and on.
We can make one.
No, it's Dave's son. All right, so this year we hired Josh Carter. As you know, we have 483,000 square feet of buildings, and we had one guy maintaining them. So we ran like a chicken with his head cut off. 8 schools. You can do the math. The state average is 75,000 per man hours of space per person for maintenance. 29,000 per custodian. So we were grossly undermanned in my department. As you know, we brought Woolwich online. That's an hour of maintenance a day. So it would help Russ immensely to be able to actually run over there and take care of something without having to run somewhere else and take care of something else. We also incorporated the School Dude, which is a maintenance request program, and preventative maintenance program. And Josh's main responsibilities is safeties. He does all the exit signs, fire extinguishers, emergency lighting, high wash stations. That takes quite a bit of time. There's a lot in a school. He also does shared responsibilities with food service. He delivers all the school's commodities monthly, right? Monthly. It doesn't sound like a lot, but when you've got 80 cases to spread out amongst 8 schools and then all the frozen stuff on top of it, he's pretty busy. He hit the ground running, and he hasn't looked back since. His skill level has increased tenfold. He's learning just as fast as he can learn, like a sponge. Give you an idea of some of the preventive maintenance. I wrote it on the sheet. He's done, this was as of last week, 1,748 preventative maintenance checks, which also allowed us to cover 2,887 trouble calls. That's with the new maintenance system. That's how we can track everything we're doing. If it ain't School Dude, then I'm going to tell you to put it in School Dude when it comes to doing maintenance. That way we can track everything, we can do follow-ups. People get reports back and actions taken, get an email back saying whether it's done, when it can be done, when it's going to be done. We can put in all that information. So it's been a very successful year with Josh.
Any questions for Dave?
Well, I don't want Dave to go on and on. But do you think is the addition of one staff person, you used the ratio that the state establishes, 78,000 square feet per maintenance person.
Right.
Where does Josh bring us? I mean, where are we now with that ratio?
Well, if you don't count me, 2 maintenance guys is 150,000 square feet. But we're maintaining. So, sure, I could always use another guy.
But right now, it took me 3 years to get this one. I'm happy. In 3 years, maybe we'll talk about it again. Unless you want to bring it up now. I mean, I'm fine with that too.
No, we don't want you to go on and on.
Okay.
And don't sell yourself short. In your report, you got right to the heart of the matter, and from a budgetary standpoint, this is important to us. When you said every dollar spent to fund this position has been paid back twofold.
Absolutely.
And I love that revenue expense. We're spending a dollar and gaining two back.
You are.
You just need
Absolutely.
to show me where we got those two for every dollar we spend. I wish we could spend like that throughout the district.
Well, you know,
We wouldn't have to tax
you
them.
got to talk to those guys.
I would just add, Josh works out of our office, and I give Dave a lot of credit, and I said this in his evaluation a couple weeks ago, is, you talk about the people, and we could talk about the other people that have been spoken to tonight, but Josh works in our office. He's a young man that is very polite, very professional, and very grateful for the opportunity he has, and his work ethic is second to none.
It is.
And we've got a lot of positive feedback from all of our staff. And he's proud of what he does, and it's refreshing to see that.
He really goes out of his way to do a good job. He really likes the job he has.
Hey, any other questions for Dave? All right, well, again, I want to thank you folks for coming in this evening. It's really helpful to us. I think it's important that we go back a year later and revisit these things, and I appreciate you guys taking the time this evening to give us that information, so thank you. We will move on to committee reports, and we'll begin with item 8.1, Facilities Committee report. I'll turn it over to Bill.
See how popular I am? Everyone's leaving. Good night, folks. Thank you. Well, first of all, we've completed our barnstorming. We've been to all 4 of the schools, 4 elementary schools, that is. And I'd like to personally thank, and I know for Alan too, and the members of our ad hoc committee, I'd like to thank Dave, who brought his PowerPoint presentation and answered a myriad of questions that community folks had. Patrick, who came to just about, well, you missed one, but this time of year, he was running all over the district and got to us and answered some questions for community folks. And particularly, I'd like to express gratitude to the administrators of the schools and the PTO leadership at each of the schools, because the board wanted community participation, and we asked these folks to go back and turn out their community folks that were interested in the schools, and they came through. Our board meetings should be as well attended as these meetings were. Each of them was well attended, and the folks came armed with a battery of questions, and I believe that we were able to answer most of their questions at this point in time. We have voluminous notes from each of the 4 meetings. You now have them at the RSU central office. You're going to be summarizing them and bringing them presumably to the next meeting of the Facilities Committee, which is the 15th of July. And we should then receive a summary of a great deal of information and a great deal of community input, which is what we sought, and we got it. And the ad hoc committee will sit down with that summary, and hopefully they'll be able to come up with an initial presentation for the board. Our target should, I think, be the August board meeting, but we'll see how this thing all falls into place and how well we can move forward with the information. But I think it would be a little bit premature like 10 days later to be able to come forth in the July board meeting with a real comprehensive presentation of the input from the communities, but definitely for the August meeting. And I more or less, when I had the opportunity a couple of times to talk to the people at the meetings, I more or less promised that we would be reporting, the ad hoc committee would be reporting back to the board with the feedback from the communities in August.
Okay. Any questions for Bill? I have a lot, but I'll save them for August. I really appreciate you guys going out and doing those meetings. That was a lot of work, a lot of time. I think it was something we needed to do, and thank you so much. Thank you, Dave, for lining that up. That was a big deal, and it took a lot of time.
Some of the feedback was predictable. Other portions of the feedback is going to be very interesting to the board, I think.
All right, we'll hear about it in August. Yeah.
Yeah, we had asked Dave to come tonight and just give you, I emailed you probably a month ago, a form via email that just gave you an update on the bond. And I just thought it would be nice, as we're starting the summer, when Dave's going to get, well, he already is very busy, just to give you an update. So I think you have one in front of you tonight that's kind of an update on the progress, and Dave was just going to quickly review that for you.
Yep, this is the update of the update. We're off and running, 3 days in. We're already got the bleachers ripped out of the middle school here. We've got structural engineering done on our roofs. We're starting to, on this school here, we have to put hanger clips on every single joist. We just ordered 1,000 of them. I picked them up today. Tomorrow we're going to start installing those joists so we can do the roofs. The security systems has already been started to be installed. We started that this morning. Windows may get delayed a week. We're waiting back to hear on manufacturing on the exact delivery date. Our original date was July 14th. We're still waiting to find out if that's still a solid date from them. The fire escape's coming out July 10th. We've met with the science labs as far as the overhaul of that part. Fire panels is July 18th. Electrical distribution will start July 7th. Let's see. Temperature control starts actually Monday for all the heating systems at the high school. That's starting Monday. That was very fast streaming. Abatement started today. Domestic hot water is still being worked on. Boiler room roof, we just got back the structural engineering designs for that. Same with the chimney, we just got back the structural data for that. Secure front entrances started today. VFD drives in the boiler room are done. Boiler blend pump in design, waiting to start in August. Secure front entrance is being done. Flooring. We started ripping out carpets today. Furniture, I believe, Bud's on top of that. Heating controls, BRVCs, front entrance, 4-fold slope. Lift is done. Dyke Newell, lot is still in development. All the secure front entrances are being started today. They're all being processed. July 8th, we opened the leach field in Pittsburgh. Phone system, West Bath, is being, parts are on order. And the roof restore started today. So we are cooking with gas. We're flying right now. I've got contractors everywhere. Yes.
So you're replacing 153 windows.
Yes.
What happens to those windows that you take out?
The contractors take them. Wait, you want some?
Well, I'm all about reuse, restore, recycle. And a great use of old windows is making greenhouses.
Not with these windows. They're 160 pounds a piece.
Okay.
There's no parts and pieces for them.
Okay.
The company went out of business right after they installed them 18, 19 years ago.
Okay. Will they at least be recycled if with the contract? Like we put stuff.
They'll recycle all the metal.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay. All right. I always reusing something for some purpose.
Yeah.
I notice you're going to keep all the hot water at the high school.
Say again?
Instead of replacing the hot water system?
Yes, we're not replacing the hot water system.
So you still have the 1,500 gallons on it?
Yes. Yeah.
It functions here. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just excessive.
It's loud.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions for Dave? Okay.
Once, twice, I'm out.
Have a great summer.
I will.
Yeah, you will.
Stop in anytime.
I think it's most appropriate under facilities. I'm just going to actually read something to you. the question has come up a couple times about Morse being on a list and the announcement being made this spring. And I know I sent you some things, but sometimes it's not always clear. And again, we will not receive, I guess, clear initial direction until we go up in the month of July to meet with the Department of Education. But I just want to read something so that maybe it will alleviate concern or question that people have. But the recent state board action of placing the additional 6 projects, which we're one of, on that approved list, represents a formal acknowledgement that the needs of those applications will be addressed through a major capital construction project. The next step is for the DOE. They're currently working on is to assign each of our projects, including Morse, a bond date or a date in which payments on those bonds will impact the state budget. So again, this is an acknowledgement that our project is going to move forward with the resources. I spoke to the commissioner last week. He doesn't see anything getting in the way of that, so we should remain optimistic. And we plan to go up, I would say, mid to end of July at the latest, to meet with Scott Brown and the commissioner as well. And I was going to invite Bill because he's the chair of facilities. If there's somebody else from the board that would like to come up as well, you're more than welcome to. Again, I think it would be an hour, 2-hour meeting, and they will kind of lay out the steps in the process and kind of advise us on how to begin. So again, that's where we are with that process.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Patrick? All right, we'll move on to Finance Committee report. And item 8.2, I'll turn that over to Steve.
Thanks. We did not have a Finance Committee meeting this month. The budget vote, I think, took precedence, and at least I am very grateful to the communities and the voters in the RSU for their support of the budget that the board put forward. I would like to have a meeting of the Finance Committee this Thursday, the 26th. I think, I don't know in what context you would raise this, Tim, but I think it was a good point. One thing I'd like to ask is if Ruth or I guess Ruth primarily might prepare or have available some preliminary indication of what the effects of current law would be on next year's budget. In other words, what are our personnel costs carried forward from the additional year, and any other items that, fuel costs and things and transportation costs that might already be negotiated in contract form, just to get an indication of where it might stand in the next year. So that meeting will be at 8 o'clock. If you could put out a notice, I'd appreciate it. And of course, as usual, all board members are welcome to it.
Okay, any questions for Steve? All right, we'll turn this over to Kyle. Item 8.3, the West Bath Borough Committee update.
Right now, we're just finished up recently the first draft budget, or attempt to make a budget what would look like if West Bath was a standalone. We recently just received the E279 from the state as West Bath's standalone unit. They finally got around to it after last November. So we do have that now, and I believe that will be, if it hasn't been put on the website, I think it will be soon. I'll double check to make sure that it hasn't happened, have it out there for anybody who's interested in seeing that. We are in the process of having some meetings with some other school districts and looking at options for educational plans for West Bath students going forward. And we are just going through that process right now. I know we're waiting a response back, which I believe we'll get soon. I believe from the subcommittee here, I think, from what I understood. So that's pretty much what I have Anybody has any questions specifically?
Any questions for Kyle? Okay, thank you, Kyle. We'll move on to item 9.0, Superintendent's Report.
Yeah, I'll be brief. Tim already mentioned graduation, so I won't reiterate that. Each year at the end of the year, you're always invited to different events, and it's kind of a rewarding time when we have celebration of people that are retiring, celebration of all the volunteers that come into our schools, as well as the concerts and other celebrations of learning that I know some of you attended at some of our schools. All were very impressive. Robotics at BMS, I think you saw in the backup that we had 2 teams compete at South Portland Middle School. And we had one team that took first place in steeplechase competition, and we had another team take third place in table cleaning competition. So very impressive, and Lawrence Kovacs is taking the lead for that, and the kids are doing great. Just a quick update on spring sports for this year. 6 out of our 7 spring sports qualified for postseason. Girls lacrosse won the KVAC championship. Boys lacrosse participated in the KVAC championship, but came up on the short end of that one. We had Savannah Simmons Grover, who's a senior on her way to Bowdoin College. Next year is the 2014 Class B state champion in the javelin. We had 2 coaches this spring that were KVAC Coaches of the Year, Linda Levesque for girls lacrosse and Steve Boyce for boys tennis. And we had 20 freshman students come in on Step Up Day that signed up and expressed an interest in continuing to build our Shipbuilders Committed group that we have that is, again, working with student athletes at Morris.
Okay, one other thing under the good news section, which I forgot to add in my comments, and I don't know timing-wise if this will hit in our July meeting, so just to make the public aware and let board members know, there will be 2 seats that are on the board that will be available this fall. Dave Barber's seat and my seat. I think you have to take papers out at some point in July. And Vita, do you know? Is that correct?
I don't know the time frame, so
If you could check and just post that on the website, just to let folks know when you need to take papers out if you are interested in running for these seats. So that was something I neglected. So we'll move on to item 9.2, financial report.
The financial report in your backup is, you can see on the top, is dated June 15th. So Ruthie tried to spread that out a little bit more to give you a good picture of where we're going to end the year at. And again, the projection, I would say, is anywhere between $400,000 and $500,000. And you can see down below, under revenues, it's $20,000 more than what we anticipated. And up top, you can see it's around $429,000 on the expense side that we have left. Again, some of that depends on operation and maintenance. You can see there's $88,000 left in there, and we're still spending a little bit of money, obviously, in that line to try to get some of our projects done. And special education instruction is a projected minus $20,000, but again, that goes back to the issue of main care that we've been dealing with, and we're anticipating another notice from the state saying they're going to take that from us. So we're expecting the worst case scenario there. It may be better, but if it's better for this fiscal year, it's going to be worse for next fiscal year. So we're hoping that they'll take it now from us. So again, no major changes from last month.
Any questions for Patrick on the financial report? All right, we will move on to old business. Board goals. Any questions, comments? Status of board goals. Okay, be thinking, we probably have a meeting in August to set goals for next year. I think One of our goals this year, communication, is one that we will continue. And at some point, there will be some outreach to folks who live within the district but send their children to schools outside the system to get a sense of what it is that RSU could be doing or why those children are going to school outside of the district. We have a bunch of second readings of policy, so I will run through those. Item 10.2, second reading of policy EBBB. Is there a motion on this?
Second.
Move to approve by Kyle, seconded by Steve. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor of the motion to approve, raise your hand. None opposed, that passes. Okay, item 10.3, second reading of policy EBCC, bomb threats. Is there a motion on this? Move to approve by Steve. Second. Second by Alan. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve, raise your hand. None opposed, that passes. Item 10.4, second reading of policy EF-R, food service program regulations. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Dave.
Second.
Second by Steve. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve, raise your hand. That passes. Okay, item 10.5, second reading of policy GA, personnel goals, priority objectives. Move to approve by Steve.
Second.
Second by Bill. Any further discussion, comments, changes on this policy? All those in favor of the motion to approve, raise your hand. Okay, passes. Okay, item 10.6. Now, this is second reading of policy GBB, staff involvement in decision-making, and the policy that we're voting on is the MSMA sample policy, not the previous RSU1 board policy. Is there a motion on this?
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Dave. Second by Bill. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. None opposed, that passes. Second reading of item 10.7, second reading of business manager bookkeeper job description. Is there a motion on this job description?
Move to approve.
Move to approve by Steve. Second by Alan. Any further discussion, additions, changes? All those in favor of the motion to approve business manager bookkeeper, raise your hand. None opposed, that passes. Item 10.8, second reading of Director of Special Services job description. Is there a motion on this? Move to approve by Bill.
Second.
Second by Dave. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve, raise your hand. Okay, passes unanimously. Item 10.9, second reading of Career and Technical Education Director job description. Move to approve by Alan. Second by Kyle. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve? Passes unanimously. Item 10.10, second reading of Facilities Director job description. Is there a motion? Move to approve by Steve. Is there a second? Second by Alan. Any concerns, comments, questions, additions, amendments to this job description? Hearing none, all those in favor, raise your hand. None opposed, that passes. And then finally, 10.11, second reading of teacher job description. Is there a motion? Move to approve. Move to approve by Dave. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Alan. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion to approve, raise your hand. That passes unanimously. Okay, on to item 11.0, new business, 11.1, personnel items. We have a number of items here. I'll turn this over to Patrick.
The first thing is just to announce a retirement. Wanda Brown, grade 1 teacher at Dyke. She's been here for 10 years in the system, and I wish her the best. And she's moving to North Carolina, and hope she enjoys the golf courses down there with her husband. So it's been a pleasure working with her. 11.1B, resignation, Paul White, kindergarten teacher at Dyke Newell. And then the next one is basically just an FYI, because Beth Kaiser, who was a special education teacher in the system, is now moving to a Title I math teaching position at the elementary level, funded by federal money. 11.2, personnel items. I'm not sure how you want to do it. You want to go through each one and do it that way and then vote on each one individually, or do you want me to go through each one and express your opinions or vote at the end? It's up to you.
Move that we go through them as a group. All those in favor of the motion to handle these nominations as a group, raise your hand. Okay, go through them as a group.
All right, so I'll just walk you through each one quickly. Is that all right?
Sure.
All right. First one is nomination for assistant principal at VMS and at Morse, and the nomination is for Holly Feeney. We interviewed we had 4 applications. We interviewed 3 people, and the committee was very impressed, and therefore we're nominating Holly Feeney. For grades 7 and 8 at Woolwich, we had 14 applications. Mr. Libby is here. He helped lead that effort. We interviewed 4 people, and this is a little interesting because we hired someone through Skype. Technology is the way it is, but as a teacher, we're very fortunate to get a teacher that is taught in Maine, but also went overseas to a school, as you can see, and now wants to return back to Maine. Tom had a hard time because he couldn't shake the person's hand, but we got over that, and we thoroughly checked references, but it is the sign of the times. Grade 1 at Dyke Newell, we'd like to nominate Kelly O'Brien. You can see we had 33 applications, interviewed 6. Carpentry instructor at BRCTC, we'd like to nominate Ray Bernier. 6 applications and 3 people were interviewed. Again, all of these, I'm trying to go through these fairly quickly, but all of our principals and directors put together a team. It could be a 2-person team, but most often it's a 3, 4, 5-person team, so that all views are kind of represented. Social studies position at Morse High School, I'd like to nominate Sarah Doubleday. Comes to us with a great educational background. You can see that was a position that Jay Pinkerton and his committee had to spend a lot of time on. 62 applications. We interviewed 4 people. Nominate Shaylon Herson for grade 1 teaching position at Dyke Newell. And nominate Chelsea Coffin as a grade 5 teacher at West Bath School. A few more. Next, I'd like to nominate Mary Parker for our new alternative ed program at Morse High School. We had 10 applications and 3 people were interviewed, and I'd like to thank Ross Berkowitz for leading that effort. And then the last one, I just need to make a slight change to that, is we have an English as a second language teaching position. and we're nominating Alicia LaFosse. And we had 5 applications. 3 people were interviewed, and that is a 40% position, not a 20%. And that's what it was budgeted as. It's just an error on my part. And then Tim just pointed out to me that I don't have Rosalie Perkins, or at least I don't see it on my list here. But Rosalie Perkins has retired from the system as a member. She was a teacher, pre-K teacher, but also a very part-time coordinator. And through this budget process, we decided that we needed a 40% coordinator of the program and no other responsibilities to go with that. So Rosalie officially retired. We followed the proper protocol. We opened the position for the director of the pre-K program and posted it, went out, outside of the school system as well. But Judy Harvey led that interview piece, and we're pleased to nominate Rosalie Perkins to fill that position.
Okay, is there a motion regarding these nominations?
I move for approval.
Okay, move to approve by Alan as a group. Second by Bill. Any further discussion, questions, comments?
I just had a question on the carpentry instructor suggestion. What are the teaching certification requirements for that, for those positions, in the vocation area? Are there any?
A bachelor's degree is required. I'm not sure exactly the certification that they have to work towards in their trades field, and what specific educational courses that they have to take above and beyond that, but I can find that out and get back to you.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Any other questions, comments? All right, there's a motion on the floor to approve the group as a whole. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. None opposed? Welcome everyone to the district, and 1 or 2 back to the district in another capacity. We'll move on to item 11.3 to approve the computation and declaration of votes of the June 10th, 2014 budget referendum. I don't recall exactly how this goes, so what I'm going to do is I will read this, and then Steve, perhaps if you would couch that in the terms of an action item or a motion. So here we have the computation and declaration of votes, the total number of votes cast in all of the municipalities within the regional school unit number 1, the RSU, in the affirmative on question 1 of the warrant for the regional school unit number 1 school budget referendum held June 10, 2014, relating to the RSU1 school budget for fiscal year 2014-2015. Said votes being computed as follows, and I'll go through this quickly. City of Bath, 400 in the affirmative, 131 in the negative. Town of Arousik, 73 in the affirmative, 13 in the negative. Town of Phippsburg, 133 in the affirmative, 51 in the negative. The Town of West Bath, 84 in the affirmative, 60 in the negative. And the Town of Woolwich, 171 in the affirmative, 79 in the negative, for a total of 861 in the affirmative and 334 in the negative. Is there a motion?
I would move that the RSU board declares that there were more votes cast in the affirmative than in the negative on said article, and then we affirm that the article is passed.
Okay, we have a motion. Second by Alan. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Okay, that passes unanimously. We'll need all of the board members to sign one of these before you leave this evening. So, on to item 11.4. This is an action item to authorize the superintendent to hire staff over the summer on the board's behalf. I'll turn this over to Patrick. He can explain this in a little more detail.
It's just something that some systems do. And the hard part is we have one board meeting a month, and when we have to hire staff in the summertime, it makes it very difficult for people to resign from a job, and a lot of people will not resign from a job until they are formally approved, by the board. And for example, if we meet at the end of July and we hire somebody next week, or we nominate somebody next week, they have to wait almost a month unless we call a special board meeting every single time. So this would only be for the summer months until, probably just for the July meeting, and maybe for the beginning of August as well. And it's just something that I can still provide you with the backup once I have, a person or 2 or 3 people together, and ask you if you have any questions, share that information with you. But it's just something that would expedite the process in the summer months for our principals and our directors and myself.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to authorize the superintendent to hire staff over the summer months, meaning July and August, on the board's behalf. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Bill. Any further discussion? Kyle, here.
As far as it's kind of general, the summer months, should we define that to specifically what months those will be? You did.
July and August.
You did, I'm sorry, I missed that.
That's all right.
I apologize. And the second thing, I just a question for Patrick is, do you expect many of them, or are you seeing any openings right at this point?
No, I think our principals have done due diligence to, you have a fairly lengthy list tonight. We do not have many openings right now, especially, again, we bring before you professional staff, which is considered to be teaching staff and administrative staff. So I do not see many that will happen over the next, month and a half, so to speak.
Any other questions? Steve?
Yeah, I would just like to clarify, at least in my mind, that if the board, that the backup material on each, if any, candidates be provided before, obviously, and questions fielded before the decision was made to hire, obviously. And secondly, I think this would be the case, that if any board member has an issue, then we can either lay that recommendation aside or call a special board meeting if that is required because of timing to resolve those questions. Would that be, that's my understanding, would that be the way that this would work in practice?
Yeah, I'd give you the backup, and then I'd give you a date to get back to me by, and give you, at least a couple days, to get back to me, but that's how it would work, just like we do now.
Okay.
All right, any other questions for Patrick? Okay, there's a motion on the floor to authorize the superintendent to hire over the summer months of July and August. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. None opposed, that passes. Okay, we'll move on to item 11.5, to approve school lunch price increases. I'll turn this over to Patrick.
And actually, I had Ellen come tonight and sit through this whole meeting, unfortunately, because it sometimes concerns me when we have to raise the prices, but there is a rationale for that, and I'd like to have Ellen come up and just kind of speak to that. I will correct one thing on here, and Ellen, correct me if I'm wrong, but the 11.5B, the secondary school lunch, would go from $255 to $265, not $270. Am I correct, Ellen?
For the next year in elementary school, lunch should be $245 and high school lunch should be $260.
Okay, so the agenda that went out is off by 5 cents on the A, so it's $235 to $245. And then it's 255 to 265.
The dime
Okay.
piece, which is the maximum the federal government can tell you to increase the lunch. They do a price equity, is what they call it. And a free lunch, I get reimbursed $2.93 from the federal government. A paid student lunch, say, is $2.55 high school. The reimbursement on a paid lunch is 23 cents. So that brings them up to $2.80. And the idea is that the paid lunch should not be less than the federal government is paying us for that same lunch for a free child. So they continue to ask us in the last several years to go up in small increments every year until we get to the place where we're somewhere near just a reasonable price. For that, they have made it reasonable by limiting what people can enroll. So what they will take, the maximum they can make it go up is 10 cents. We can go up further. When they did the little factor they do to see what you might go up, it was the 15 cents. When I talked to them in Augusta, they said you can choose to go up to 15 cents, but you only have to go up a dollar. Patrick thought for a school district that is a blue-collar town that 15 cents was a lot. So we decided to go up 10 cents on each, which will meet our guidelines. Now, next year, of course, that 293 that we're trying to get to will also change. You know, as prices go up, we would hope that our reimbursement would increase as well. So what you're going to see is small increments each year until we get to a place where our world evens out.
Any questions for Ellen?
Do you have an idea of what the actual cost is per lunch for a student?
It's over $3.
So we're charging much less, and we get reimbursed much less for that.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Ellen.
You bet.
Need a motion to
So this is an action item, that's correct. So
elementary school to 245 and secondary school to 265. That's the way to make the motion, that in fact, we increase to those levels.
So you're making the motion to increase to those levels? Okay, so Bill has made a motion that we increase the elementary school lunch from 235 to 245 and increase the secondary school lunch from 255 to 265. Is there a second? Second by Kyle. Any further discussion? I think at some point, and maybe next year, maybe this is one of those things that we need to look at just to have a better understanding to sort of address what Kyle was getting at about how our lunch program works. It costs us $3 to serve a lunch and we're only charging less than $3 and we're being reimbursed less than $3. How does that math work out? And maybe talk about things about where does this number need to go to? What would the quality, how would the quality of food change if we were to charge more? Would we have more people applying for free and reduced lunch, which benefits the district, if we were to increase our prices? So I think in the future, this might be a topic for discussion and perhaps a goal for the board. Any other comments? Okay, there's a motion on the floor to approve or to raise to the recommended amounts. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. None opposed? That passes. Thank you, Ellen.
I'm glad we had that conversation.
All right, we will move on to item 11.7, First reading of job descriptions. 11.7A, Library Information Specialist. Any comments, discussion on this? Okay. Item 11.7B, Assistant Principal. Discussion? Okay. Item 11.7C, Social Worker. All right, be prepared to vote on those job descriptions at the next board meeting. We'll move on to 12.0, public comment section. Is there anyone from the public who would like to speak?
Last person standing.
Go ahead. For item 12.5, we will be going into executive session to deal with a personnel matter. Is there a motion?
Can I make a suggestion that we resolve the board meeting and then the date of the next board meeting?
Sure, we can move that up. So we'll move item 12.5 down to 13.5. So 13.1, set next regular RSU1 board meeting. This would be in the month of July. Does anyone have suggestions? How about the 21st? Anybody have a problem with the 21st? Vacations, holidays, weddings, graduations? Birthdays? That's a perfect day. What an excellent day. All right. So we will set it for July 21st at 6 p.m. and location is at Dave's house. That's right, that will be our retreat. Okay, so on to item 13.5, executive session for personnel matter. I don't know, that would be sad. Is there a motion to go into executive session? Moved by Bill? Second by Jen? And, okay, there's a motion on the floor to go into executive session. I need a motion prior to that. Let's hold that motion. Let's make another motion. To extend beyond the 8 o'clock time. Motion by Kyle to extend beyond 8 o'clock. Is there a second? Second by Steve. Further discussion? All those in favor? Okay, so we will extend this meeting. So prior to that, there was a motion on the floor to go into executive session. All those in favor? We are now in executive session. So you're staying. The board will meet and then we'll come and get you.
And there will be no additional action.
There will be no additional action at the return. We do.
I don't know. I got keys.
We can sign that now. Yeah, let's do it.